Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are talking about Twilio Interconnect, how I can choose the right connectivity method for my communications. Before we kind of introduce ourselves, anybody here have Interconnect currently? Customers who are using Interconnect by any chance? Customers who've talked to anyone about using Interconnect at Twilio so far? One, two,
okay,
few?
yeah, okay, cool.
Good to know. Cool. So my name is Humberto Reyes. I am a senior product manager in the voice and video unit. And I focus on Interconnect. And my colleague?
I'm Alex Sieber. I'm an engineering manager on the Interconnections team.
And so let's go through what we're going to cover today, just to kind of have a picture of what's going on. So we're going to do a quick connectivity overview. Then we'll do the Twilio Interconnect story, moving right along to what are the options, what are connectivity options on Interconnect, and then what's the right connectivity option for our customers. And then we'll take a look at some use cases, and we'll wrap it up with some Q&A at the end. So we'll start off with the internet connectivity.
Yeah, so the public internet today is great, and that's how most of our customers connect to us today. Some reasons why we love the public internet. It's very flexible. You can scale up, you can scale down. It's really easy to set up. Most of you have an internet connection at your office or at your home. It's widely available and really easy to connect different networks together. And it's very cost effective. A price per megabit per second, for example, really, really affordable on the public internet. And it's how most of our developers and large scale customers connect to us today. And we really love the public internet, but it doesn't have everything that our customers need.
Right, so as we know, it's best effort at network, right? So as we always like to wear our customer shoes, as we went through this as we were growing into what Twilio is today, we realized that there was a need for private connectivity. And thus, Twilio Interconnect came about. And a lot of the feedback we were getting back is that people were looking for high performance. So they wanted to have a private connection so that they could replace the best effort network, that is the public internet, and really have direct peering and gain consistency in throughput and performance. And then security and risk mitigation is another reason why. So people wanted to be able to control security, be able to isolate, and not have to worry about what could happen on the internet. As well as quality of service. So you have control over that bandwidth. And if you have a large contact center, you want to be able to control what size of bandwidth you have so that you can control that quality of service. And cost of control. Knowing how much you're going to be charged on a monthly basis so you can actually determine what kind of bandwidth you want and need. Now, as we did that, then we actually had to have physical locations. So Twilio Interconnect is one of the only products on Twilio that actually has hardware down at data centers. And so the locations that we currently have, San Jose, California, Ashburn, Virginia, London, and Frankfurt, which is coming up on Friday, Singapore, and 3 up-and-coming, Tokyo, Japan, Sydney, Australia, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. And again, the idea is wearing our customer shoes. We want to be able to give coverage throughout the world so that as customers need to have private connectivity with Twilio, they're able to do that.
And all those locations are with Equinix, so we're in very carrier-dense facilities, so we can meet the connectivity needs of all of our customers.
Great. And so how do you actually connect to Twilio through Twilio Interconnect? Number one that we have is a cross-connect, which is basically a dedicated physical interconnection with Twilio. So you're in the same data center, and we're basically connecting from your equipment to our equipment. Then there's a virtual private network, which basically leverages the internet. It's an IPsec tunnel. So basically, your communication, your data is traveling through a secured, encrypted tunnel from your location to where we are at our data center.
Then we also have Bring Your Own MPLS, or you may see BYO MPLS. So for customers who have an existing MPLS relationship, an AT&T, CenturyLink, Verizon, et cetera, you can extend your network into one of our data centers, and we'll go into some more detail about that later. Mm-hmm. And then we also have third-party exchanges. So we're not just tied to Equinix data centers. We work with a few different providers. With the rise of SDN, or software-defined networking, there's a lot of new exchanges popping up, both in the US, Europe, other parts of the world that we're now a member of. So a lot of our customers are pulling us onto these exchanges, and we're really meeting the customer demand by connecting to them over those exchanges.
Yep, fantastic. And so what we'll do is we'll talk through each one of these in a little bit more detail. The cross-connect, again, allows the customer to basically send and receive traffic through a physical connection between both the customer and their infrastructure, it requires that customer to actually be in the same data center as we are. Or if they're using bring your own MPLS that we'll talk about in a little bit, and they have a circuit dropped in, that provider has to be willing to extend that circuit to our actual equipment via cross connect. So it's critical that they're in one of the data centers. We've actually have San Jose, Ashburn, Frankfurt, London, Singapore, and now Frankfurt currently available.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, because we're with Equinix, if you're not familiar, they have a campus model. So if you're anywhere on the Equinix campus, you're generally a cross-connect away. So it is very location-specific, but again, we can work with you to figure out which data center makes the most sense for you.
Perfect. And the VPN, again, it provides that point-to-point connection to Twilio via an IPsec tunnel. Again, you have to remember that it is leveraging the public internet. So it is leveraging that best effort network. If there's any issues with that internet connectivity in between your location and Twilio, you will feel that impact and effect. But it does ensure that your media and or signal cannot be intercepted as they are encrypted.
Yeah, and then BYO MPLS, or bring your own MPLS. Again, so this makes the most sense for our customers who have an existing MPLS relationship. And you'll work with the provider to essentially extend a node into one of our data centers, generally the one that's closest to you geographically. If you don't have an MPLS provider today, this may not be the best option for you, and we can talk about that offline. But there's a few nuances here, so if this is something you're considering and you do want to extend your MPLS network, please engage us and your Twilio salesperson ahead of time to make sure we're on the same page with the carrier about the responsibilities and who does what in that scenario. And then we have third-party exchanges. So some of you may have heard of Megaport or Packet Fabric. These are growing data center agnostic exchanges. So if you're on their network in any data center, they can connect to any other party on that exchange. We also recently joined the Equinix Cloud Exchange. So this is an SDN fabric between all the Equinix data centers. So it really allows us to connect to customers in Chicago or Dallas where we are not physically located. Ostensibly, you're a virtual cross-connect or a VLAN away on those networks.
Yeah.
So this is a really growing trend in the industry, especially in Europe. There's a lot of established exchanges over there, and that's really where we see things going to be able to virtually be all around the world while physically staying within those certain data centers.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that heavily leveraged by customers who are in multiple data centers, even when they're in data centers that we're not in outside of Equinix, leveraging Megaport or Packet Fabric or Epsilon, something that's worked really well.
And one note about this too, if you are on some kind of exchange like AM6 or D6 or any of those other exchanges, please let us know. We're putting together a roadmap for next year and want to know where our customers are at. So if we can find a way to meet you on one of those exchanges, please let us know.
Absolutely. So these are the basic forms of connectivity. So what we want to do is show you a little bit of a matrix, talk about some of the things that we take into account as you kind of determine how you want to connect to Twilio through Interconnect. So we have high performance, right? So the high performance is really all about that direct peering connection, and you're looking to gain that consistency in throughput and performance. Security and risk mitigation, again, is looking for a way to allow your organization to better control security policies for any sort of sensitive data and mission-critical workloads that you may have. Quality of service is really you're looking at latency. How do we decrease the latency? How do we get the best quality of voice that we can get for our customers? And then the cost control. You want to know how much you're going to be spending on a monthly basis versus potentially using an ISP where it fluctuates based on how much bandwidth you used, and you don't actually know how much it's going to cost you. So we took these into account, and we kind of went through each one of the connection types that we've talked about and kind of give you a little bit of an idea of which one they provide and kind of how they fit in. So the cross-connect itself, it's a very high performance. You have control over what kind of bandwidth you're going to put on it, and it's got the security and the risk mitigation. You get the quality of service. The delivery time is about halfway through all our options. So if you're already in the data center, for example, in the Equinix data center that Twilio is in, it takes normally about 72 hours to get that cross-connect. And then it's a matter of configuration and getting things up and running. The actual price, it's mid-range. So we have all the prices on the website. We'll make sure we give that resource to you here at the end. The BPN is something that we've seen initially, customers will use it as a proof of concept. So they have an application, maybe they've tried it on the internet, they're interested in getting private interconnect, private connectivity. They'll use a VPN and kind of test out the application, make sure that it works properly, they don't have any issues. And some customers will decide to scale that up depending on their use case, or then they'll decide to actually use a cross-connect or go through the actual need of an MPLS circuit being dropped into the data center.
Yeah,
and it's very quick, the delivery time.
And then they can also keep the VPN as a failover. So if you start on a VPN for proof of concept, you have a 10 meg connection or 100 meg connection, and then you understand what the workload looks like, and then you roll out maybe a cross-connect or an MPLS connection from there.
Absolutely, we've seen that quite a bit.
Yep. So MPLS, like we talked about, it does check all the boxes. MPLS is a very rock-solid technology. It's been around for a very, very long time. Used by a lot of banks, highly regulated industries. Yep. They have an MPLS network with Verizon or CenturyLink, so you do get all of the checkboxes there. However, it can be really long to implement. If you don't have an MPLS provider today, it could be like 3 months, 4 months to implement that and install that. We've seen it take a while. If they have one today, you're looking at 30 to 60 days, best case scenario, to extend that network into our data center.
Yeah, so we tend to see a plus 30 days if you don't have one. So
yeah.
You're looking at 30 to 60 days if you already have some sort of relationship, and more like 60 to 90 days if you don't have one.
And it also can be pretty expensive, especially once you get over a certain limit, like around 100 megs or higher. MPLS gets really, really expensive. And in case it wasn't obvious with a lot of these, there's the Twilio cost for a lot of these. You have the interconnect charge as well as the carrier cost. So for the MPLS portion specifically, you will also be charged by your carrier for the MPLS node, which can get pretty expensive. And then lastly, the third-party exchanges. So of course, you have the security and risk mitigation. You know where the traffic is going. You have the quality of service. The performance, it depends. Every exchange is a little bit different, so we don't want to put the checkbox here for all of them. It just depends on how that exchange is configured, how much traffic is going across. Some of them do perform very, very well, but it just depends on the exchange. They do kind of function like a cross-connect from a pricing and turn-up perspective, so you can kind of expect the port costs and the turn-up costs on the exchange to be roughly similar to a cross-connect.
Yeah. And a lot of times, depending on the scenarios, it can potentially move faster.
Yes.
It just really varies, yeah.
Yep.
And the reason we don't have high performance for the third-party exchange is it really depends on your path. Where are you connecting from, and what the actual fabric that you're connecting to looks like. It is possible, but we've seen some cases where it is and some cases where it isn't. Yeah,
they're extending these exchanges out where you're really crossing a lot of, the geographical distance is pretty large, so it can slow things down.
Yep. So let's take a look at some use cases, right? So the first one is the public internet.
Yep, and so in all these scenarios, you're gonna see the customer, that's the end user, so the person making the phone call, so the one there. So they call in, this is all over the public internet. This is how most of our customers are connecting to us today. The number comes in on a Twilio number, hits the appropriate AWS region into our VPC, and then goes out AWS over the public internet to you, the customer, and then to your agent or your employee there. And the call flows all the way through over the public internet, and that's how most things work today for most people.
And we see this very often. I mean, this is, as you remember, it's flexible for its scalability, the ease of setup, and the cost effectiveness. So definitely something we see quite a bit. Now, a cross-connect, which is a very popular option on the Twilio Interconnect side. Again, you see the customer starts off, they make a phone call, it goes to the AWS region or over to the Twilio BPC, on AWS, over a direct connect from AWS to our equipment, and then a Twilio cross-connect, and then it travels over to your equipment. And then you may have an MPLS going back to your actual data center or your actual call center, or you may have a VPN depending on how the scenario is. We see this quite often. Now, what you don't see here is redundancy. Again, this is just showing you kind of how the cross-connect will work. Oftentimes, customers will have multiple cross-connects to actually do redundancy, one to Ashburn, one to San Jose, depending on the scenario. And just bear in mind that as we show these, there's many different flavors. It can be really customized, and it really depends on your use case.
Yeah, we support a wide range of redundancies, so we can talk offline about all the different options there.
So now virtual private network. Again, this is the VPN that we've talked about, oftentimes used for a proof of concept. Other customers actually use it as their failover, and some actually use it in production. It really depends on the use case. Again, the customer is calling on a number. Twilio number normally comes to the AWS region, the Twilio BPC. From there, direct connect to our equipment, and then across a secure VPN tunnel over to your actual contact center. And again, you get security out of this for sure. It's encrypted. And the delivery time is rather fast. So for some customers, it just makes sense to go with this option.
And then again, bring your own MPLS. You'll see this is a little bit more complicated. And the reason we did that is typically if you have an MPLS deployment currently, it's because you have a lot of locations. You're a lot of different offices, multiple call centers, and that's why you love an MPLS network. It's because of the meshing. So essentially, if one link goes down, things can fail over very easily to the other one, which is really important for call centers or scenarios where you have multiple time zones you're considering or regions, and you want to have different call centers operating at different times. So this scenario, again, the customer's coming in over the PSTN, hitting the appropriate AWS region and Twilio VPC. And then in this scenario, they've got MPLS to both locations, so they can fail over between those two. And then they have their own data center infrastructure, and then they have their MPLS back to the enterprise location.
Yeah, this is really interesting because we see this scenario for large enterprise customers oftentimes, and they will actually leverage it for routing purposes, right? Yeah. Think you start off on the East Coast, you're dialing outbound or receiving inbound calls, and as you move over to the West Coast, you move your traffic from your East Coast to your West Coast. We also see load balancing. Oftentimes they need to take a center down for some reason, so they'll route all their calls over to the West or to the East, depending on the scenario. And it gives really a wide range of flexibility while gaining quality of service, again, high performance, the security, and the troubleshooting, which is important.
Right, yeah. So if you have a very complex environment and you're being asked to really understand where the call traffic is going between us and your environment, Interconnect is a really good option because you know exactly where the traffic should be. It should be going from our AWS region over the Interconnect into your environment. And so we have complete control of that. So for troubleshooting, it becomes really, really easy. Without Interconnect, there's the public internet in between. And so understanding where to troubleshoot over the public internet does pose some challenges.
Correct. And we've seen this set up not just with it. We only did a US only, but obviously we've seen this in Europe and other locations as well.
Yep.
So Twilio Interconnect, those are our connection options, connectivity options, as well as some of the use cases that we run into. We've got plenty of resources online. Twilio.com/interconnect will give you kind of the overview of what's going on. And then Twilio.com/docs-interconnect will give you the details as to how we actually go about implementing that. Products currently supported and available over Connect are Elastic SIP trunking, the SIP interface, and the client WebRTC. And like we said, we love to engage in conversations. It's a custom product in many ways. We have a toolbox with a variety of tools that allow us to actually provide connectivity in a variety of ways. And that's really all we had to show today. We'd love to take some questions if anybody has any questions. We've done a fantastic job.
We did such a good job. There wasn't a single question.
Everybody's ready to go.
That's great.
All right.
All excited for Bash. Awesome.
It is the end of the day.
Yeah, it is the end of the day. Yeah, exactly. Sure. Well, we'll be around for a little bit if anyone has any questions they want to come and talk to us.
Please, and if you need to track us down, that's where we are. Thank you so much.
Thanks, team.
Appreciate it.